Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of your favorite automotive podcast, the Hook Turn podcast, with my very good friend Sanvib. How are you tonight, Sanvib? Recording from your BYD?
Yes, enjoying the heated seats right now.
Yeah.
And we've got some good topics, especially, well, I mean, one isn't a new car, but it has now been confirmed coming to Australia. Another one is actually something quite exciting, a new type of interior, you could say. And then finally, just a general discussion about a brand that not many people in Australia talk about.
Yeah, so let's get started. And by confirmed, I think what we mean is that there was a dealer that in Queensland that leaked it and then said it was coming soon, but then Ford, I think, promptly asked them to get rid of that website. So anyway, it's the car that we're talking about is the Ford Bronco, and this is not the Bronco that's sold in the US, which is like a very ladder frame chassis, off-road, rough and tumble vehicle, which is more of like a Toyota Land Cruiser Prado comparator. This is the Chinese version, which is built on a what is a monocoque chassis, like most passenger cars, and yes, has some off-roading ability, but nothing like the American style, and is more, focused on better driving on road and so on. So, Samuel, do you want to take us through a little bit of the specifications for this one?
Yeah, so it's basically, from what I understand, the EREV. So there's actually very few of these. They're quite different to PHEVs. So PHEVs are like um, the petrol engine can basically drive the car on its own. With the EREV,
Yeah.
broadly speaking, what the idea of the petrol engine is to basically generate power, electricity for the electric power.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
it's so effectively the car is always running on electric power.
Yeah.
The difference is you've, if needed, there's petrol as a backup there to generate electricity um for the electric motor. Whereas obviously with the PHEV, it can do both. It can most people, from what I understand, most people who own PHEVs often
Mm.
run it like a hybrid. They
Yeah.
actually don't necessarily run it in full EV mode unless if it's for a short journey and certainly not full petrol mode, but they
Mm.
usually run it as a hybrid, but just a slightly more fancy hybrid.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it'll be interesting. Now, look, I will say the design is a very convincing knockoff. Like, yes, it doesn't look exactly like obviously the original Bronco, but honestly, for 99% of consumers, it looks similar enough that I don't think
Mm.
anyone will look at it and be like, this is really different to the original Bronco. And obviously, from what I understand, the original Bronco is probably never going to come to Australia.
Yeah.
In the orange paintwork, it actually looks pretty damn good. I'll
Yeah.
actually say it's a pretty good looking car.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, one of the most interesting things will be that even though it's Chinese built, it actually won't necessarily be competing in terms of price with other Chinese cars. I would not be surprised. Do you think it'll undercut the Mackie, which starts at what, 60, like mid 60s, if I'm correct, the Mackie starts, or
Yeah,
low 70s, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, let's see. The thing is like I think it should because it's not a full battery electric vehicle. So it's using, I mean, it is still using a relatively big battery because just for context, I think it uses a 43.7 kilowatt hour LFP battery, and that's paired with a what is it, a 1.5 liter turbo petrol engine. So just from a pure how I like how the frame that I'm thinking about is that the battery is typically the most expensive component of an electric vehicle, and because the Mark E is a full battery electric vehicle, has a much bigger battery, therefore is more expensive to build and then is sold therefore at a higher price. This should be because it's also being made in China, smaller battery, and then coupled with a turbo petrol engine. I think it should. Like I reckon if they want to be really competitive, this should be starting at the mid 50s mark, in my opinion. And I think the rumor is that it's going to come in three specifications, so like three sort of trim levels. So start at the mid 50s, then mid spec maybe low 60s, and then top spec just under 70,000. I think that's what I would anticipate in terms of the pricing. But what do you think, Sandbib?
Yeah, it will have to be. like again, it can't be more expensive than Mackie. So
Yeah,
basically, yes, it'll have to start at the mid 50s.
yeah,
If that's the case, it actually could get some bias because that's
yeah,
effectively you're playing in that space where most, I mean, also it can't be more than mid 50s because then it'll be more than the Tesla Model Y. And let's face it, if you're more expensive than the Tesla Model Y, you better have something really good to justify the price premium of the Model Y.
yeah,
And I don't certainly don't think this car does.
yeah,
So again, it's a beauty of our market that we have so much competition that companies like Ford are forced to price their cars appropriately if they even wanted to have a single sale here. So yes, a mid 50s price sounds really good.
yeah. And I think this car is really going to be sold on its design, like especially the exterior design. So, it looks very rough and tumble and adventure ready, and that's a big, I think that's going to be a big drawing card. I think people still have perhaps slightly more confidence in the Ford brand than some of the up and coming Chinese brands. Although I do have to say that Ford isn't like yes, the Ranger is very popular, but they've previously had issues with the Ford Focus and the power shift transmission, so it's not obviously not on the sort of um, same level of reputation and reliability and durability as like Toyota, for example. But it is a legacy brand. Some people take comfort in that. Ford is obviously very well established in Australia, huge dealership network. So this will be, easy to buy, easy to maintain as well and service and so on. I have had a look at the interior, and this is probably where I think there's the bigger differentiation in terms of design compared to the American market Bronco. So quote unquote the new original Bronco, and that's because this interior is like very sort of Chinese style. So they have the huge touchscreen in the middle, and then they have like a slim instrument cluster just in front of the driver. So it's a very sort of Chinese design. Your typical big iPad on the dash, freestanding iPad on the dash type Tesla aping design. And I think they have some physical controls to like look at the drive modes and so on. But yeah, very sort of touchscreen heavy. So I think that's probably where the Chinese inspiration has come from in terms of catering towards the Chinese market. So yeah, and just to confirm, we should also confirm some of the range estimates. So, um, Ford is claiming, or at least on the Chinese cycle, 220 kilometers of electric only range. So, and a total range when you include on a full tank of 1,220 kilometers. So those are both pretty big figures, but the Chinese cycle is extremely optimistic, even more so than the European WLTP cycle. So I think in real world, I would anticipate maybe a real world electric range of maybe 150 kilometers, 100 to 150 kilometers, and then total range is more towards the 800 to 900 kilometer mark. Does that align with your thinking, Sanbit?
Yeah, that sounds like it's what should be basically competitive for something
Yeah,
like this. And yeah, the range, yes, it's on the CLTC cycle, so
yeah,
we should probably not take it literally, but
yeah,
obviously your regardless, it's gonna have a long range. Just the nature of the
yeah,
car itself will mean that it will have a long range, and it's going to be interesting because the only, as far as I can tell, this will be the first big mainstream EREV because the
yes,
Leapmotor, let's face it, Leapmotor is not really a brand that many people are aware of. I'm
yeah,
sure there are people who bought it, but let's face it, you're not going to see too many on the road. So, obviously, if Ford bring it, they will not just be bringing this car; they'll actually be bringing still relatively unknown powertrain technology to like a bit more of a mainstream knowledge, like how FEVs, I mean, I guess Mitsubishi pioneered it with their
yeah,
Outlander FEV, etc.
yeah.
Yes, we have EREVs, but the reality is that a brand like Ford bringing one in is going to make it a lot more mainstream.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to do a good job with the marketing on and try to clearly explain, this is an extended range electric vehicle. So it's an EV, but it just gives you a little bit like it alleviates your range anxiety essentially. So it's yeah, ultimately the wheels are always being driven by the electric motor. There's no mechanical connection between the engine and the wheels, and that's what makes it the extended range or EV. Yeah. Okay, look, we might move on to the second. We also have some other news coming from Ford, right? So this is changing tack a little bit. So still another Ford vehicle, and this is going to be rumors that there's going to be a four-door Ford Mustang. So yes, we did touch on the Mark E, which is their battery electric SUV that Ford brands with the Mustang brand, but this four-door Mustang is going to be a combustion engine based model, and it's basically what if I think the best analogy is to compare it to Porsche. So you have Porsche has the iconic 911, and then you can think of the Panamera as the sort of like a four-door 911. Well, Ford has the Mustang Coupe, which is their sort of iconic Mustang, and this is like a this Mark IV, which is what they're going to be calling it, is like a four-door version of that coupe. So it's going to be a low-slung, sort of like a sedan car, but has a lot of performance. I think the rumors are that it'll pack a 5-liter hybrid V8, which sounds really cool. So, if they can combine that V8 rumble with, a good amount of fuel efficiency, that'll be really cool. And it will do, what is it, 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 4 seconds. So that's very, very fast. Yeah, Sanviv, do you think this car is gonna, well, firstly, do you reckon it'll come to Australia or given how, we don't have many sedans aren't particularly a huge segment in the Australian market, do you reckon Ford will skip it?
Oh, the Mustang is actually not, it sells decently well in Australia, I
Well, for
think,
a
if I'm
sports
correct.
car, but
Yeah,
yeah,
for a sports car. And it's, well, the previous gen Mustang, I'm not talking about the one now, but the previous gen Mustang, I'm pretty sure when launched in 2017, 18 here in
yeah.
Australia, the base model was like 60 something grand, which for a performance car was quite affordable. Yes, it was for the EcoBoost four-cylinder turbo, which, um, some people say isn't a real
Mm.
um, Mustang. It's not a real Mustang, it's a V8. Even though, from what I understand, apart from the sound, and yes, it's slightly less powerful, but from what I understand, the EcoBoost is still more than quick enough for
Oh yeah,
your everyday
yeah.
driving.
It had the same engine as the Ford Focus RS, and it actually because it was lighter over the front wheels because it has a smaller engine. I think it handled better than the V8 Mustang as well. But yeah,
Yeah. So, and the reality is that this will still feel more of a Mustang than the Mach-E, which looked like a Mustang, but otherwise, from what I understand, there's
yeah,
nothing Mustang about it. At least
yeah.
this one, yeah, this one, yeah.
Yeah, so let's yeah, I think for the Australian market, like, this is almost if they sell it, it's almost going to be like a spiritual, successor to models like the old, uh, Ford Falcon, XR8s and XR6s and, all of those cars. And then, we had the FPV models as well. And this is like stretching back to what the mid 2000s when the Falcon was really in its heyday. This is if they sell it here, I think it's going to be like a spiritual replacement um, for those models. So for customers who are hankering for those types of vehicles. I think if they can tap into that in Australia, that will be really cool. The other thing that I'm thinking is that, we had the Kia Stinger, which is no longer sold in Australia, but that had a V6 and, had a bit of a following, like wasn't ultra popular, but a lot of, it was popular with the police. There's a lot of police fleets using the Kia.
Actually, now that you bring it up, this could be popular with the police.
Yeah, maybe like that's the thing. It could be popular with the police. So, if it's sold in Australia, so I think there. I feel like it's ultimately it's going to be a niche model just because sedans just aren't that popular in Australia anymore. Like the SUVs have really sort of dominated, but I think there is still a market like for performance sedans. It might be a niche one and it'll cater towards enthusiasts and the cops potentially, but people holding on to their Kia Stingers, holding on to even like their old Holden Commodores or Ford Falcons, those sorts of more performance. Maybe if you have an very old Mercedes AMG or something, and you're looking to upgrade and you want that muscle car, or you have a Mustang, and you want something a little bit more practical, as your only car, then I think there is like a potentially niche, but an enthusiastic customer base that Ford could tap into with this Mark IV. So I'm hoping personally that they sell it because, I reckon we need that spiritual successor to the Falcons and, this is going to be, I'm stereotyping, but the Bogans need something, right, to cater for to replace their old XR8s and XR6s. Sammy, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the reality is that the pricing of these cars, obviously, that you're not going to get it used, will
Yeah.
probably mean that that audience is going to be well priced out of
Well,
purchasing
hey,
these.
yeah, maybe they've
It's
earned
why you
some
don't see
money now.
Bogans driving an M3 or an AMG or anything
Yeah,
like. So
yeah,
yeah, it is a kind of sad thing that like regular people, quote unquote, regular people have kind of been priced out of these things. But yes, it's probably unlikely. Yes, I sometimes still see people in the market, both GTIs who are like in their 20s, like I want to have probably on finance, but whatever, they can still.
yeah.
But yes, these cars are yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing. Maybe you have a hot hatch and you want something with a little bit more emotion. You can, maybe you can sort of upgrade. But I do agree that it's not going to be like the old days where you can get a, V6 Ford Falcon or V8 Ford Falcon that was, made in Australia. That's, 35 grand or 40 grand or something like that. This car is not going to be priced anything like that. Like I would anticipate if it's sold here, it's probably going to be priced similarly to the two-door Mustang or probably potentially even a little bit more expensive. So maybe looking closer towards the six-figure mark. Because what's the V8 Mustang in Australia? I think it's what, 80, right? It's around the 80 grand mark,
I'm
85
pretty
grand.
sure the new gen is more than 80, man. I'm pretty sure now the EcoBoost would be around 80, if I'm correct. I'm pretty sure
Oh, really?
I can
Okay.
check right.
Yeah, let's say
I'll check
that.
right now. But yes,
Yeah.
if I'm correct, the current gen significantly increased the price.
Okay.
Yeah. The EcoBoost starts at 87.44.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the V8 is six figure, 103.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember I was like thinking 80 would be for the EcoBoost. It's what I said earlier that the first generation in 2016, the EcoBoost started at 60 something, which was
Yeah.
actually relatively, and
Yeah.
I think the V8 was 80 something. So yeah,
Okay. That's more
yeah,
expensive than I thought. So there you go.
yeah.
So I think if it's sold here, this car is probably the Mark IV, as they're calling it, especially with the 5 liter, hybrid V8. I anticipate there's probably going to be a less powerful model as well, but yeah, it's going to be a six-figure car. But yeah, I'm just curious to hear more about this powertrain, like a hybrid 5 liter V8. That sounds really interesting to me. I'm keen to see how much of a hybrid it really is. So yeah, and whether they can keep the sound. Okay, Samuel, did you have any other points, or should we move on to our next topic?
Let's move on to the next
Let's move
topic.
on. Okay, all right. So our next topic is all about Jaguar. So Jaguar, as our listeners know, is currently on like a life support because they've gotten rid of all of their models, and they're sort of the brand is sort of eagerly or about to be rejuvenated by the a very controversial Type 01, which is, an all-electric, very expensive GT. So, and Jaguar is going to be positioned as an all electric brand, sort of in between um, Porsche and Bentley almost. So yeah, positioned as like a position sort of half a step above the German trio from BMW, Audi, and Mercedes. So previously, it was trying to compete directly with those brands, but now it's going to be positioned as a more niche but more premium brand compared to those Germans. So now the latest story with the Type 01 is that they have revealed the production spec interior. And I have got to say, my initial reactions are, look, it's very minimalist. I have some mixed feelings because it looks really good in the photos. It looks like they don't have any piano black plastic, and it looks like the materials that they're using are really good. But I have some concerns from just a usability perspective. So just to describe this in a little bit more detail, they have they have a steering wheel with what seems to be like haptic buttons. It's a two spoke, as far as I can tell, maybe three spoke, but two spoke steering wheel, and that sits in front of a very large digital instrument cluster. So no surprises there. But I think it's really the center console and what's happening on the passenger side, which is worth talking about. So they have like a almost like a flying bridge or a center console that really divides and it flows through all the way to the back. So this is a strict four-seater. Really divides, creates a strong divide between the driver and the front passenger. And in the front, there's this very small portrait-oriented touchscreen. I don't know whether there's another hidden infotainment display because I don't know how they're going to show like navigation or Apple CarPlay, Android Auto on such a small portrait-oriented display. So Sanvib, what are your, and I don't see any physical controls either, so that's a little bit disappointing. But Sanvib, what are your thoughts on this interior design?
Look, first off, given the exterior, we always knew the interior would have some uniqueness to it. They wouldn't
Yes,
have such a,
controversial, yes.
they wouldn't have such a crazy exterior without also trying to revolutionize, quote unquote, the interior, or at least have something different to everyone else. Now, and we've actually spoken of this, now it seems like to be different, it's
Yeah,
like less screens. Like, before it was like
yeah,
how many screens, like luxury car makers were like, how many screens can you shove
yeah.
into the
And
car? Like
Mercedes is still going down that route, but yes, yeah,
make the whole car, make the whole car a street,
yeah,
if, almost. Whereas now it's all about minimalism, right? We saw with the Luce as well.
yeah,
It's all about minimalism. It's all about like trying to make every like technology discreet and not so showy, which in a weird way is almost like going back to what, you know, old school style luxury was, which was focused more on the appearance and things like that. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, you're now it's like at least now we're sort of going back to that rather than just being like, okay, let's shove in a massive screen and call that luxury. Because as we've spoken about, if you want a massive screen, the Chinese will do it for you for a very, very low price. You don't need to pay, crazy amounts of money. So there needs to be a distinction. Now, with the center pillar,
yeah,
I don't know what it does that because most cars, SUVs have, those flip down um, armrests.
yeah.
Like every car that I've owned has one of those. Like this feels like just a version of that, but that's just always there rather than could
Fixed,
be one
yeah,
that's tucked away. Like
yeah,
I, 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 yeah, eh, yeah. The other big thing is, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm looking at the Autocar article now, but they haven't really allowed us to zoom in properly to
yeah,
the thing middle because we can't see the digital instrument. I'm going to assume it just literally doesn't say Jaguar. I'm going to assume there is a digital instrument cluster there.
yeah,
And but yeah, it's a bit hard to judge because it's not the full thing. But yes, we've got the main unique thing, which I guess is that center pillar. But like I said, unless if it folds out to reveal something else, like
yeah.
you can
Don't
massage
think
your
it
arm or
will,
something on it. I don't,
yeah.
or maybe I honestly don't know. But yeah, otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you touched on the Luce, and I think it's like the distinction that I will make is that there's a difference between minimalism that's still functional and like is usable. So like the Luce, for example, still has a lot of like introduced a lot of physical controls, and everything from the steering wheel has these really nice clicky buttons. The center display below that, there's a really nice, these aluminium cold to the touch buttons to control, and glass buttons to control everything from the volume to the air conditioning and all of those things. This is like, yes, it's minimal, but I feel like it looks like they've compromised like the actual usability, because I just don't see how like i- how this is going to be like a usable when you're actually using, like, driving the car. So like, for example, we touched on the center armrest, and some of you are like, I don't know how this is going to work out in practice, and so on. Like, it's not adjustable. It seems like it's fixed. So, like, it doesn't seem like it's adjustable at all. Like, if you want to increase the angle of it so you can comfortably rest your arm when you're driving, I don't think you can really do that, because it seems like it's almost fixed in a fixed position. I don't know how much storage there's going to be there. And and I think the more direct comparison that I want to make is with with actually Audi's new design philosophy. So, for example, we've seen the photos of the interior of the Audi Nuvolari, and we've also seen the interior of the Audi Concept C, and that has also like, I would argue that also has a minimalist approach, but it's not as it still has a focus on usability, because they have like for example, they have a touch screen that is hidden and you can flip it in and out, but it has physical controls and it has a real focus on craftsmanship. Like, you have these gorgeous, you know, um, milled aluminium or metal door handles. You have these beautiful physical controls for the air conditioning that you can like roll. It looks like it's a very tactile experience, and that's more closely aligned with the philosophy in the Ferrari Luce, whereas this does not scream like it's going to be a very tactile experience. Like, yes, it looks like they've used very nice materials and leathers and so on, but the actual operating the controls, it still seems like it's being done through this small touch screen. Like, it's touch screen, but it's small, and I don't know where the rest of the technology is, because you still need, the basics. Like, I've mentioned this, like, you need the Apple CarPlay, you need a good um, navigation system and all of those. So I don't know how that is that only going to be in the instrument cluster, or is there going to be some other hidden display that sort of seamlessly comes out when it's needed for the front passenger, or in the center? Like, I'm just not sure. Like, it looks at the moment that they've stuck on like a cheap Android tablet. Uh, to control maybe the air conditioning, and that's just a touch screen. So I'm a little bit confused and a little bit concerned. And even the steering wheel, look, it has these hidden until lit buttons. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of that. So, I mean, let's see. I might be wrong. Happy to be proven wrong. And this is something that you might have to sit in the car if you get an opportunity to see what it's actually like. Yeah, Sandra, did you have any thoughts on that? Like,
I'm just looking forward to seeing everything together. So right
yeah,
now they're sort of just giving us bits and pieces. I just want to see everything together. If I'm correct, the full reveal is next month.
yes, I think so. Yeah.
So I just want to see everything together and see, like, obviously it's not a car. We don't even know. Do we know if it's coming to Australia?
I mean, no, I don't know. I don't know if we do. I mean, I hope it does, and it would be good to make sure that Jaguar still stays in Australia. And but it's not confirmed. But I would assume, like, surely, it would come here, hopefully.
All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the last topic then.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. So, from Jaguar, which is sort of in zombie mode at the moment, to another brand which I think in Australia, Sam, it would be fair to say it's on a bit of a death watch.
I mean, look, the reality is that a lot of these niche brands weren't doing amazingly prior to the arrival of the Chinese, and now are barely in the picture because the cold reality is that, and Volkswagen's experiencing the same issue now. Even the Volkswagen's more mainstream, that
Yeah.
you're that they basically are finding that this semi-premium segment, what we can call it, where you're not going full Audi, BMW, Lexus, etc., but obviously
Yeah,
a bit more nicer, so to speak, than your average Toyota and stuff.
yeah,
I think that segment is kind of dying with the advent of Chinese cars because Chinese cars can get you both at once. Chinese cars can get you the niceness and at the price of a mainstream car, so if that kind of makes sense. So this small little marketplace that these cars used to occupy is now
mm,
kind of being eaten up because they're not that much nicer than Chinese cars too, and they're also much more expensive. And they're not so nice that people are going to be willing to pay German car prices for it, if that kind of
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. So just to clarify, the brand that we are talking about is Peugeot, which is, well, in Australia, it's been around for a while, very long established brand. But the story is that the current distributor, Inchcape, which is a British company, they are ditching distribution of Peugeot, and it's unclear what will happen. So Stellantis, which is the sort of the corporate overlord of the Peugeot brand, has said that they will continue to support Peugeot. So I don't know whether that means they will look for another distributor and there's a temporary pause in Peugeot sales, or whether Peugeot will become sort of like Renault and become like a factory-backed operation, which in my opinion would be good, but and showing like a renewed sign of confidence in the brand. But from a consumer perspective, the main benefit or consequences, there's a lot of discounts on current Peugeot stock. So, for example, the e-Expert electric van is discounted by up to $30,000, and some of their passenger models. So they have Peugeot in Australia have a range of small and medium SUVs. So they have the 2008, which is sort of like a Yaris Cross CX-3, Mazda CX-3 competitor. The 3008, which is sort of like a RAV4 competitor, mid-size SUV, and then you have the 5008, which is like a seven-seat version, so more of like a, I guess like a Toyota Kluger competitor. Those are all discounted by around $10,000 to $11,000, and then you have the 308, which is their Volkswagen Golf, Toyota Corolla, Mazda 3 competitor. That is 42,990 drive away, which I think is a very like reasonable price given the interior that you're getting and some of the like it's fully loaded as well. And then you have the 408, which is a slightly weird segment, like it's sort of it's sort of half a size up, but similar, has the same interior to the 308 and is more of like a cross between a lifted sedan slash SUV, but that's a little bit more expensive at 49,990 drive away. So yeah, basically their entire range is discounted. And I don't know, Sandvib, would you look to buy or consider any of these models even at these discounts, or are you? I know you're sort of a Chinese car aficionado. Would you just say, no, screw Peugeot, it's still a bad deal. I am just going to buy a Chinese car.
I think that okay, so these new prices will move, and I guess if you're in this very specific category of I was interested in a French car, but the price was the only thing putting me off. If you're in that incredibly specific category of people, I
Yeah.
guess this could move you.
Not sure if how many people there actually are in that category, but yes.
Yes. Otherwise, it's funny because the Renault Megane RS, that was a truly unique car that they had. I remember back when they were still obviously selling that in Australia. It was like, okay, that is a truly sorry, not the this is Peugeot. Okay, different brand. I lost myself there. But anyways, my point being is that these cars, while they look nice, they and in some ways they're very unique. Actually, this reminds me. Do you remember when we sat in the Peugeot back in the?
Uh,
We sat in
really?
one. I'm pretty sure. Because remember, it was in the auction place.
Oh
that we went
yeah,
to.
that's right. The
Yeah.
508. Yes, the
Yeah, yeah,
508.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. And we were like quite impressed by the interior.
Yeah,
So it's
I
what I
really
said.
liked it.
If
Yeah.
someone was like willing to take a chance, basically, like
Yes.
literally with these brands, it's like, are you willing to take a chance on this brand? They
Yeah.
sit in it and then they're like, okay, I really like the interior of this car. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, this price has been heavily discounted from previously. Sure. If they can get that done, then maybe. Now, what I have been noticing, this a bit off topic, and this is why I think of Renault rather than Peugeot, but
Yeah.
Renault, if you watch TV still, I've
Yeah.
noticed they've been advertising their new, what's their new hybrid-ish kind of
This
scenic,
is it the
right?
Symbios or
Their
the
Symbios, yes,
yes.
Symbios. They've
Yes.
actually been advertising on like stuff like 7 News. That's
Yeah.
so that's why before my mine was on Renault, I briefly forgot that we're talking about Peugeot. So I guess if Peugeot actually tell people rather than us reading it on a car expert that this is
Yeah.
happening, if people actually tell like they tell mainstream people that hey these deals are going on, they might actually get a few customers. But
Mm.
I don't know, we'll see. I also will feel bad for obviously however small number of people that were who paid full price or whatever for these because now they've seen
Yeah.
already pretty terrible resale. It's tanked even further.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think look, yeah, I feel sorry for the older customers of the 308 because it's been discounted by like, 10 grand. So if somebody paid like in the 50s for the 308, they're kind of yeah, they have lost a lot of money in the car. But I think to your point, Sanviv, like you buy Peugeot if you like the design. Like I personally think the 308 in particular, I think that looks amazing for like a small hatch. It looks, I would say it's probably in my opinion, the best looking car in its class. Like it looks very sexy. I love those fangs, like the DRLs, like the vertical daytime running lights. I mean, it's fully loaded as well. Like it's not short on features. You're getting like everything from Matrix headlights to heated seats and all of the safety technology. There's no options or anything. You're getting, you got a premium sound system as well. You have like all of the features. Like it is fully loaded. I think the only thing and in terms of like the powertrain, it is, it's a 1.2 liter hybrid. I think they're calling it the 308 hybrid, but I think it's essentially a mild hybrid. But so it's not it's not the most sort of powerful car, but it is efficient and it is very lightweight. And the other thing, the rear suspension is not a full multi-link suspension, so it's a that Peugeot are branding it as a semi-independent torsion beam. So that's maybe a little bit disappointing, but I think the interior more than makes up for it. It's a very Peugeot's latest models have all had a very avant-garde design with their iCockpit. I personally, think it's really cool that they've pushed the boundaries of design, but it's one of those cars that this is a car that you don't fall in love with because of the specifications and, the PDF spec sheet. You fall in love with it because you see it on the road. You're like, oh wow, this car looks amazing. It's so sexy. And then you sit inside and it's like, oh, this is really nice. And then you're like, oh yeah, I want to buy it. And um, it's a decision of the heart. You have to throw caution to the wind with, things like resale value and insurance and some of those things and prices of spare parts and so on. So that's at least that's my thoughts. Um, so yeah, Sam, what 308 is there? If you had to choose in the Peugeot lineup, would you pick anything?
I think probably the 308 GT hybrid. I think it's one of
Yeah,
the
same.
better looking cars. It's
Yeah, you wouldn't pick any of the SUVs, the 3008 or anything.
I think like if you're going to go for something like this, you'd go for something that looks unique. I don't think there are too many cars that look as unique as a 308 hybrid
Yeah,
hatch. Like it is true, it looks very distinct on the road.
yeah,
No question. Yeah. So And I mean, it is a hybrid, so
Mm.
it is a hybrid. So it actually does have that going for it. That isn't, they're not full petrol cars, but they
Yeah.
theoretically have the fuel savings that a hybrid brings. So yeah,
Mm.
I will be like, if anyone is willing to take a chance on these cars at these prices, absolutely. Like we're talking like while they're discounted, they're not cheap. Like we're not saying
Yeah.
42,990s a drive away is cheap. Like that's not a
Yeah.
small chunk of money to put on a brand that we don't even know is going to be around for that much longer. Yes, they're saying
Yeah.
they'll continue to support cars even if they Peugeot themselves selling brand new ones here in Australia. But that's still a big gamble to take, and it's still a lot of money
Mm.
to take on an unknown. Like 43 grand can get you a lot of car from other much more established brands, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So again, it goes back to what I said that these price decreases, while a bit more in line with the market and expectations, still would only appeal to those very niche round of people who first even have 43 grand lying around to spend in a car, were interested in a French car, and somehow the previous price was just too much for them. And this is
Yeah.
like, this is just okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know like we've talked a little bit about the Peugeot switching distributors and stuff. What are your thoughts on what will actually happen? Because, Citroën is now gone from the Australian market. They left in 2024. And I think just looking at Peugeot sales, like because I know there was a story about how, how much they've lost in terms of like their sales really have declined quite a bit. I'm just trying to figure out if I can find that story. So they have had quite a big decline this year. Okay. Yeah, so their sales have gone down 66% in 10 years, which is that's insane, frankly. Like um they had their worst result in 32 years in 2025. They sold only 1,350 cars, and in 2026 so far this year, they've dropped 41% compared to the same period in 2025, and are on track to hit their lowest level since 432 cars were sold in 1991. So that's that's crazy. So the best year of sale was 8,807 vehicles in 2007, where they finished 15th. And now in 2025, they're at 1350. They finished in 48th position. So really, really bottom of the ladder. And a lot of these brands like to claim that, we're not focused on dumping cars into the Australian market. We're not focused on sales and so on and so on. But the reality is that you can't really be a sustainable operation with selling, and have put all the resources in marketing and after sales support and all of that when you're only selling 1,350 cars a year, and likely this year they might even sell less than 1,000 cars. Like that's ridiculously low. And they have, it's not like their models are old or anything. They have, these models are all fairly new. So it's, frankly, it's very, very disappointing to see. January to June 2026, they've sold 400 models. So I'm not even sure if they're going to get close to 1,000 sales, which is absolutely insane. Like that's crazy. So, yeah, Sandeep, do you reckon it's the end of the line? Will Peugeot exist next year?
I have a feeling that a lot of these smaller brands will go the way of Citroën and start pulling out of Australia's market.
Yeah.
I feel like they will start to. Renault, I mean, is trying to push again
Yeah.
the fact that but Renault is a much bigger company than Peugeot as well, and they've got a much
Well, in
more.
Australia at least, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I feel like yeah, again, the fact that I thought of the Megane RS and thinking of Peugeot
yeah,
shows you at least with the Renaults they have some relatively iconic cars that they can think on. Peugeot, while their cars look distinct, are not necessarily iconic in any kind of way. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have to agree with that. So, yeah, it's not looking good for Peugeot, and I sort of anticipate that they're going to go the way of the Dodo, unfortunately. As much as I, really like the 308, and the 508 is it's been discontinued in Australia since for a few years now and is globally discontinued. I really like the design of that 508. Like that car really, when you see it in person, it's quite a looker. But okay.
Okay.
All right, look, I think we might end it for this week's episode of the Hook Turn podcast. So please remember to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.